The doorbell echoed through my empty house at 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't expecting anyone. My hair was piled in a messy bun, and I wore my oldest sweatpants, the ones with the hole in the knee that I'd never gotten around to mending. I was surrounded by legal briefs I'd been reviewing since putting Danny to bed an hour earlier. I opened the door to find Leo standing there, his arm wrapped around a woman I'd only seen in Instagram posts. Crystal. She wore a white dress that hugged every curve, diamond studs glittering in her ears. Leo had traded his usual t-shirts for a button-down that probably cost more than my electric bill. "We need to talk," Leo said, pushing past me into the house I'd once shared with him, the house I now struggled to pay for alone. Crystal followed, her eyes scanning my living room with undisguised judgment, taking in the stack of files on the coffee table, the toys I hadn't yet put away, the basket of unfolded laundry. "Nice place," she said, in a tone that meant the opposite. "Cozy." Leo didn't bother with pleasantries. "We've decided we want full custody of Danny." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" Crystal sank onto my couch, crossing her legs. "Leo's business is taking off. I'm quitting my job next month. We can give Danny a real family, a mom who's actually home." "You've known my daughter for what, 3 months?" My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. Leo scoffed. "Crystal's more maternal in 3 months than you've been in 4 years. Always working, always distracted." "I'm providing for our daughter," I said, my hands balling into fists. Crystal's laugh was like glass breaking. "Providing what exactly this?" She gestured around the modest living room. "Leo says you push paper at the courthouse. File clerk, right? Adorable that you think that's providing." Leo pulled a document from his jacket. "Our lawyer drew this up. Sign it, and we can avoid a messy court battle. You can have Danny every other weekend." I didn't take the paper. "Get out." "Don't be difficult," Leo sighed. "Think about what's best for Danny. Crystal's parents have connections. Private schools, music lessons, summer camps. What can you offer on a government salary?" I walked to the door and held it open. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." Crystal stood, smoothing her dress. "We already told Danny she'll have her own pony at our new house. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." As they left, Leo paused in the doorway. "The hearing's in 3 weeks. Dress nicely, okay? First impressions matter to judges." I closed the door, sliding down against it until I hit the floor. Only then did I allow myself to cry, but just for 5 minutes. I had work to do. 3 weeks later, I sat in courtroom 7, hands folded in my lap. My gray suit was simple but impeccable. My hair was pulled back in a neat bun. I'd arrived alone, turning down my sister's offer to accompany me. The door opened, and Leo walked in with Crystal and a man in an expensive suit, their lawyer. Crystal wore a pale pink dress that made her look younger, more innocent. She carried a designer handbag that probably cost more than my monthly salary. They didn't immediately notice me. Leo was laughing at something the lawyer said. Crystal was checking her reflection in her compact mirror. When they finally spotted me, Crystal nudged Leo and whispered something. They both smirked in my direction. As they passed my table, Crystal paused. "Public defender?" she asked, eyeing me with fake sympathy. "Oh, honey, you should have taken the deal. This is going to be embarrassing for you." I remained silent as they settled at their table, Crystal arranging her dress just so, Leo checking his watch, a new one I hadn't seen before. The bailiff called for all to rise as the judge entered, but instead of proceeding to the bench, he stopped and turned to me. "Your Honor," he said, "given the circumstances, Judge Calloway from District 8 will be hearing this case instead. He's waiting in chambers to discuss the situation with both parties." Leo frowned, looking between me and the bailiff. "What's going on? Why change judges last minute?" The bailiff cleared his throat. "To avoid any appearance of impropriety, given that Judge Palmer works in this courthouse." Crystal's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. "Judge who?" "Judge Palmer," the bailiff repeated, nodding at me. The silence that followed was absolute. Leo's face drained of color. Crystal's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for water. That's not possible," Leo stammered. "She's a clerk. She files paperwork." The bailiff looked confused. "Judge Palmer has been on the bench for 3 years. Before that, she was one of the top prosecutors in the district." Crystal swayed slightly, clutching the table for support. "You're a judge?" Her voice was barely audible. I finally spoke. "I tried to tell you about my promotion 4 years ago, Leo. You were too busy with your phone to listen, just like you were too busy to attend my swearing-in ceremony, too busy to notice the nameplate on my home office door." Crystal's eyes rolled back, and she crumpled to the floor before anyone could catch her. Like and subscribe if you want to know what happens next in this courthouse showdown. How did Leo miss that his wife was a judge for all those years? And what will happen to little Danny? Comment below with your thoughts. My name is Autumn Palmer, and until 3 months ago, I was living what I thought was a manageable life, balancing my career as a district court judge with raising my 4-year-old daughter Danny as a single mom. Leo had walked out a year earlier, claiming I was boring and married to my job. For months after he left, he barely contacted Danny, sending occasional texts asking if she'd grown or learned anything new, as if she were a plant or a pet rather than his child. I'd met Leo Ryan when I was still a prosecutor, handling a case where his friend was the victim of a hit and run. Leo had been a witness. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely impressed by my command of the courtroom. After the trial ended with a conviction, he asked me to dinner. Our relationship moved quickly. He was spontaneous and carefree, the opposite of my methodical, planned existence. When I told him I was being considered for a judgeship, he celebrated by taking me dancing. But looking back, I realize he never asked questions about my work, never wanted to hear about my cases or challenges. Whenever I tried to share a difficult decision or an interesting legal argument, his eyes would glaze over and he'd change the subject. "Nobody wants to hear about boring court stuff," he'd say, pulling me onto his lap. "Tell me about you, not your job." I mistook his dismissal for a desire to separate work from our personal life. I thought it was sweet that he wanted to know me beyond my career, so I stopped sharing that part of myself with him. When I was appointed to the bench, Leo skipped my swearing-in ceremony for a pickup basketball game. "Those things are always so stuffy," he said. "We'll celebrate our way tonight." But that night, he came home late, already drunk from celebrating a friend's birthday he'd forgotten to mention. After Danny was born, Leo became increasingly restless. My schedule as a judge was demanding but predictable. I was home by 6 most evenings, rarely worked weekends, but Leo complained constantly about my obsession with work. "You're always reading those boring briefs," he'd say while I prepared for the next day's cases after Danny was asleep. "Why can't you just watch TV like a normal person?" He began staying out later, coming home smelling of alcohol and perfume. When I confronted him, he blamed me. "If you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need excitement elsewhere." The day Leo left, he packed while I was at work. I came home to find Danny with a teenage neighbor and half our belongings gone. His note simply read, "This isn't working. I'll call about Danny." For months, he made minimal effort to see our daughter. His child support checks came late, if at all. I adjusted to single parenthood, creating routines that allowed me to be both judge and mother. Danny thrived despite her father's absence. Then Crystal appeared in Leo's social media posts. Suddenly, he wanted regular visits with Danny. At first, I was relieved he was taking an interest. Then came the comments. "Danny says you work all the time." Danny mentioned she eats frozen dinners a lot. "Does Danny always wear hand-me-downs?" Each pickup and drop-off became more tense. Leo would arrive with Crystal, both of them scrutinizing my home, my appearance, my parenting. Crystal would ask Danny leading questions while I stood by, trying to maintain my judicial composure outside the courtroom. "Wouldn't you like a mom who can bake cookies with you after school instead of working?" she'd ask my daughter, shooting me triumphant looks. I later learned that Crystal's family owned several car dealerships in the region. Leo had recently started working for her father, suddenly flush with money and status he'd never achieved on his own. They'd bought a house in an exclusive neighborhood, complete with a swimming pool and playroom designed by a professional. The night they showed up with custody papers was the culmination of weeks of escalating comments and thinly veiled threats. But never, not once, did I imagine they'd actually try to take Danny from me. Now, as court officers helped Crystal into a chair and gave her water, I watched Leo's face transition from shock to embarrassment to calculation. He leaned over to whisper urgently to his attorney, whose confident demeanor had noticeably wilted. The bailiff approached me. "Judge Calloway is ready to see both parties in chambers, Your Honor." I gathered my files and stood. Leo was staring at me as if seeing a stranger. Perhaps he was. As I walked toward chambers, my phone vibrated with a text from my sister. "How's it going? Does Leo still think you just push papers around?" I didn't reply. The truth was about to become abundantly clear to everyone in that room. Judge Calloway's chambers were nothing like my own. Where I kept my space minimalist and organized, His walls were covered with framed diplomas and family photos. A large oak desk dominated the room, with 4 chairs arranged in front of it. "Please, sit," Judge Calloway said. He was in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. I'd argued before him as a prosecutor years ago, but we'd rarely interacted since I took the bench. Leo's attorney looked pale as he settled into a chair. Leo himself kept darting glances at me, his expression oscillating between confusion and growing anger. Crystal had recovered enough to join us, though she sat as far from me as possible, her face flushed with embarrassment. "This is highly unusual," Judge Calloway began, removing his glasses. "Judge Palmer, I understand you're the respondent in this custody case?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "And Mr. Ryan, you're seeking full custody of your daughter, with Judge Palmer receiving only limited visitation. Is that correct?" Leo's attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, in light of new information, my client would like to request a continuance to reassess our position." Judge Calloway raised an eyebrow. "What new information would that be, Counselor?" The attorney shifted uncomfortably. "It appears there was some misunderstanding about Judge Palmer's occupation." "A misunderstanding?" Judge Calloway repeated. "Please elaborate." Leo spoke up, his voice tight. "I didn't know she was a judge." The silence that followed was deafening. Judge Calloway's expression remained neutral, but his eyes reflected disbelief. "Mr. Ryan, am I to understand that you filed for custody of your child, claiming her mother's career made her an unfit parent, without knowing what that career actually was?" Crystal touched Leo's arm. "We thought she was a clerk or something. She never corrected us." I felt my temper flare. "I've been a judge for 3 years, Leo. Before that, I was a prosecutor for 5. You attended my law school graduation. You were there when I passed the bar." "You never talked about work," Leo shot back. "Because you made it clear you found it boring. You walked out of the room whenever I brought up a case. You skipped my swearing-in ceremony." Judge Calloway held up a hand. "I think I've heard enough to understand the situation." He turned to Leo's attorney. "I'm denying your request for a continuance. Instead, I'm requiring all parties to attend mediation before we proceed further, and I'm ordering a full custody evaluation." He turned to Leo and Crystal. "The court takes a dim view of custody requests filed without due diligence or good faith basis. I strongly suggest you reconsider your position before we reconvene." As we filed out of chambers, Leo grabbed my arm. "You set me up," he hissed. "You let me walk in there looking like a fool." I removed his hand from my arm. "You did that all on your own." Crystal was crying quietly, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "Everyone in the courthouse saw me faint. Do you know how humiliating that was? Almost as humiliating as having your ex and his girlfriend show up at your house to demand your child because they think your job isn't important enough," I replied evenly. Leo's attorney pulled him away before he could respond. As they huddled near the water fountain, I heard Crystal's voice rise. "You told me she was nobody. You said this would be easy." I walked to my car alone, my legs shaking slightly. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was ebbing, leaving me drained. I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from my sister Ivy and a text. "Call me. I'm dying to know what happened." Instead, I drove to pick up Danny from preschool. Her face lit up when she saw me, her tiny backpack bouncing as she ran across the playground. "Mommy, you're early!" she exclaimed, launching herself into my arms. I buried my face in her curls, breathing in the scent of Play-Doh and strawberry shampoo. I thought we deserved an ice cream date. Over rainbow sprinkle cones, I tried to explain in 4-year-old terms what had happened. "Remember how Daddy and Crystal wanted you to live with them instead of with me?" Danny nodded, ice cream dripping down her chin. "Crystal said I could have a pony. Well, today a judge, like Mommy, told Daddy that wasn't going to happen right now. We're going to talk more about it, but you'll keep living with me." "Can I still see Daddy?" she asked, her brown eyes, so like Leo's, wide with concern. "Of course, sweetheart. Daddy loves you." I kept my tone neutral, even as I wondered if that was truly the case. Had Leo sought custody because he genuinely wanted more time with Danny? Or was it Crystal's idea? Or worse, was it just another way to hurt me? That night, after tucking Danny in, I poured myself a glass of wine and finally called Ivy. "You let him humiliate himself," she crowed after I recounted the day's events. "That's poetic justice if I've ever heard it." "It doesn't feel like justice," I admitted. "It feels messy and sad." Because you still care what that jerk thinks, Ivy said, after everything he's done. I didn't respond immediately. Did I care what Leo thought? Or was I more concerned about Danny, caught in the middle of adult games she couldn't understand? The custody evaluation will be thorough, I said finally. Leo's going to have to answer for his absence this past year. And Crystal? Will her fainting spell be included in the report? Ivy's laugh was sharp. This isn't a joke, Ivy. This is Danny's future we're talking about. My sister sobered. I know, I'm sorry, it's just… Leo treated you so badly. He walked out on you both, barely paid child support, and then had the audacity to try taking Danny. Part of me wants to see him suffer. I understood the feeling. In my darkest moments after Leo left, I'd imagined scenarios where he regretted his choices, where he begged for forgiveness I wouldn't give. But vengeance was a luxury I couldn't afford, not as a mother and certainly not as a judge. I just want what's best for Danny, I said. And what's that? Seeing her father every other weekend so he can pawn her off on Crystal while he goes golfing? I winced at the accuracy of her assessment. Leo had already missed 2 scheduled visits in the past month, claiming work emergencies, the same boring job stuff he'd criticized me for. I don't know, I admitted, but I have to try doing this right. The next morning, my judicial assistant Tricia greeted me with wide eyes. The courthouse is buzzing about what happened yesterday. Is it true Crystal fainted dead away when she realized who you were? I sighed. Please tell me this isn't going to be in the local paper. Not the paper, but it's definitely making the rounds in the break room. Tricia followed me into my office. Judge Williams asked if you needed time off to deal with personal matters. I'm fine, I said, settling behind my desk. What's on the docket today? Arraignments until noon, then the Henderson trial continues at 1. Tricia handed me a stack of files. Oh, and this came for you. She handed me an envelope with my name handwritten on the front. I recognized the flowing script immediately, Crystal. After Tricia left, I opened it carefully. Judge Palmer, it began. The formality made me smile despite myself. I want to apologize for yesterday. I was shocked and embarrassed, but that's no excuse for my behavior. I never would have agreed to seek custody if I'd known the truth about your position. Leo told me you were neglecting Danny because of your meaningless courthouse job. He said you were always working but barely making ends meet. He painted a picture of a child raising herself while her mother chased a dead-end career. I now realize he lied to me, just as he's probably lying about many things. I'm reconsidering my relationship with him and definitely my role in this custody dispute. I have no desire to take a child from her mother. I hope we can move forward with respect. Sincerely, Crystal Bennett. I read the letter twice, trying to process my feelings. Relief that Crystal was backing down, anger at Leo's manipulations, or skepticism about her sudden change of heart. My phone buzzed with a text from Leo. We need to talk, alone, no lawyers. I showed both the letter and text to my own attorney that afternoon. It's a trap, she said bluntly. He's scrambling because his case just fell apart. Don't meet him alone. What if he wants to drop the custody suit? Then he can do that through proper channels. Autumn, you're a judge. You know better than to have ex parte conversations about pending litigation. She was right, of course. I declined Leo's request, suggesting he communicate through our attorneys. His response was immediate and angry. This is about our daughter, not your precious legal protocols. That evening, my doorbell rang as I was preparing dinner. Through the peephole, I saw Leo standing on my porch, alone. Go away, I called through the door. You know we shouldn't be talking directly. 5 minutes, he pleaded. Crystal's leaving me. This whole thing is falling apart. Please, Autumn. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, though I didn't invite him in. Whatever you have to say, make it quick. Danny will be done with her bath soon. Leo looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing the same clothes he'd had on in court yesterday. I messed up, he said. I know that now. Which part? Abandoning your daughter? Lying about me to your girlfriend? Or trying to take Danny away from the only stable home she's known? He flinched. All of it. I was jealous, I guess, of your success, your purpose. You walked out on us, Leo. You chose to leave. Because I felt invisible. His voice rose, then immediately dropped as he glanced toward the bathroom where we could hear Danny splashing. You were moving up in your career, and I was just existing. When I met Crystal, her family made me feel important. They gave me opportunities. So you decided to punish me by taking my child? Leo ran a hand through his hair. Crystal's father suggested it. He said judges always favor mothers unless there's something wrong with them. We thought your job was the weak point. I almost laughed at the irony. And now? Now Crystal's gone back to her parents. They're furious about the humiliation. Her father fired me this morning. Leo's voice broke. I've lost everything, Autumn. Please don't take Danny from me too. I studied the man I'd once loved enough to marry, to have a child with. He looked broken, desperate, but I'd seen that look before. In my courtroom, defendants who were sorry only because they'd been caught. I need to check on Danny, I said, starting to close the door. Wait! Leo put his hand out to stop the door. What if I drop the custody suit? Can we go back to how things were? Shared custody? You haven't even been using the visitation you already have, Leo. You've missed half your weekends in the past 2 months. That will change, I promise. From upstairs, Danny called out, Mommy, I'm ready for my story. I looked at Leo steadily. Talk to your lawyer. Have him contact mine. This isn't the place for these negotiations. As I closed the door, I saw something flicker across Leo's face, in the same flash of calculation I'd noticed in the courtroom. It made me uneasy, though I couldn't pinpoint why. That night, I lay awake long after Danny had fallen asleep, turning over Leo's visit in my mind. Something didn't add up. Leo never admitted failure easily, and he certainly never begged. What was he really after? My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. You should check Crystal's Instagram now. Curious and uneasy, I opened Instagram and searched for Crystal's profile. Her account was public, with over 5,000 followers, mostly showcasing her luxury lifestyle, designer outfits, and exotic vacations. But her most recent post, uploaded just an hour ago, made my blood run cold. It was a series of screenshots, text messages between her and Leo spanning the last 6 months. Messages where they plotted against me. She's so clueless. She has no idea we're building a case against her. My lawyer says if we can prove she's neglectful because of work, we'll get full custody easily. Take pictures of anything that looks bad at her house. Dishes in the sink, laundry not done. We need evidence. Danny said she had cereal for dinner last night. Perfect. Document everything. The caption under the screenshots read, I was manipulated into helping destroy a child's relationship with her mother. I'm ashamed of my role in this and am making amends the only way I know how, with the truth. Sorry, Judge Palmer. The post already had hundreds of comments, many from people who clearly knew Leo, expressing shock and disgust. Others were from strangers, rallying behind me despite knowing nothing about me beyond Crystal's confession. I scrolled further down Crystal's feed and found another post from 30 minutes ago, a video. My hands shook as I pressed play. Crystal's face filled the screen, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. I need to set the record straight, she began. Leo Ryan convinced me his ex-wife was an incompetent mother who put her meaningless courthouse job above their daughter. He said she was mentally unstable after their breakup, and that she was barely making ends meet. She wiped at her eyes. Yesterday, I learned that his ex isn't some clerk. She's Judge Autumn Palmer. Yes, that Judge Palmer, the youngest appointed circuit judge in our state. Leo lied to me, to his lawyers, to everyone. Crystal took a deep breath. But that's not the worst part. When I confronted Leo after court, he admitted he'd known all along. He thought if we could get custody of Danny, Autumn would be forced to pay significant child support, money he planned to use to invest in a business with my father. My phone slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. Leo had known? All this time, he'd known exactly who I was, what I did, and he'd used that knowledge to manipulate Crystal while pretending ignorance? I picked up my phone, hands trembling with rage. The video continued. I'm publicly apologizing to Judge Palmer, Crystal said, and I've provided all text messages and emails to her attorney this evening. I was complicit in something horrible, and I'm owning that mistake. The video ended, but I couldn't stop staring at the screen. Questions whirled through my mind. Had Leo really known all along? Was his appearance at my door tonight an attempt to damage control before Crystal's revelations? My phone rang. My attorney, Melanie. I'm guessing you've seen it? She asked without preamble. Just now. Did she really send you evidence? Everything. Texts, emails, notes from meetings with their attorney. It's damning, Autumn. They were building a case against you for months. Leo even coached Danny to say certain things during her meetings with the custody evaluator. My heart sank. He used our daughter as a pawn? It gets worse. There are messages suggesting he deliberately started missing visitations to create a narrative that you were keeping Danny from him. I closed my eyes, processing. Why is Crystal doing this? Revenge because Leo humiliated her in court? Maybe. Or maybe she genuinely feels guilty. Either way, her father's legal team is handling her now. They're distancing the family from Leo as fast as possible. What does this mean for the custody case? Melanie's voice was grimly satisfied. It means it's over. No judge would give Leo custody after this. In fact, we have grounds to request supervised visitation only, given his willingness to manipulate Danny. After hanging up, I checked on my sleeping daughter, then returned to my phone. The notifications were overwhelming. Colleagues, friends, even my mother calling from her cruise in Alaska. News traveled fast in legal circles, and this story had everything: drama, betrayal, and public humiliation. I switched my phone to Do Not Disturb and tried to sleep, but my mind raced with implications. How would this affect Danny? My reputation on the bench? The custody arrangements going forward? Around 3 a.m., headlights swept across my bedroom ceiling. A car had pulled into my driveway. My heart rate spiked as I slipped out of bed and peered through the blinds. Leo's car sat in my driveway, but he remained inside, engine running. I watched as he pounded his steering wheel, clearly agitated. Was he drunk? Dangerous? Should I call the police? Before I could decide, he backed out and sped away, leaving me shaken and even more certain that something had to change. The next morning, my judicial assistant met me at the courthouse entrance. Judge Palmer, Judge Williams asked to see you before court. Judge Williams was the presiding judge, responsible for administrative oversight of all judges in our district. Finding him waiting in my chambers sent my anxiety spiraling. "Autumn," he said, rising from the chair across from my desk. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine, sir," I said automatically. "I apologize for any disruption to court operations." He waved away my concern. "I'm not here about operations, I'm here about you. That Instagram post is everywhere this morning. The Chief Justice called me personally to make sure you're being supported." I blinked in surprise. "The Chief Justice knows about this?" "The whole bench knows, Autumn, and we're united behind you." His expression softened. "Take some time off if you need it. Family comes first." "With all due respect, sir, I'd rather work. Sitting at home would only give me more time to dwell on this mess." Judge Williams nodded. "I understand, but I'm reassigning your cases involving family law for the next few months, to avoid any appearance of bias." "I appreciate that." After he left, I tried focusing on my morning docket, but concentration proved elusive. During lunch recess, I checked my phone to find 3 voicemails from Leo, and a text. "My life is ruined because of you." I forwarded the text to Melanie without responding to Leo. By afternoon, Crystal's posts had been picked up by local news outlets. A reporter tried to catch me in the courthouse parking lot, asking for comment on the custody battle that exposed judicial corruption. "There is no judicial corruption," I said firmly, continuing toward my car. "This is a private family matter that's being distorted by social media. No further comment." At home, I found Danny subdued during dinner. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, stroking her hair. "Mia's mom told her that my daddy was on TV," she said. "Why is daddy famous now?" I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-up problems get more attention than they should. "But you don't need to worry about it. Is daddy in trouble?" The innocent question broke my heart. "Daddy made some mistakes, but he loves you very much. At least I hoped that part was true. Will I still see him on Saturday?" I hesitated. After everything that had happened, I wasn't sure if allowing visitation was wise. But canceling would only hurt Danny more. "We'll see," I said, non-committal. "Now tell me about that art project you were working on at school." Later that night, I received an email from Leo's attorney stating that his client was withdrawing all custody claims and would accept whatever visitation arrangements I deemed appropriate. The formal tone couldn't hide the desperation behind the concession. My phone rang immediately after Leo again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Stop calling me Leo. Communicate through your attorney." "They're investigating me at work," he said, his voice slurred. "Ethical violations. Crystal's father is friends with the board. I'll lose my license." "That's not my problem." "It is your problem. You're Danny's mother. If I can't work, I can't pay child support." "You've barely paid child support for the past year anyway," I reminded him. "Because I was saving for the custody battle." He sounded frantic. "Autumn, please. Tell Crystal to take down those posts. Tell her to say she made it all up." "Why would I do that?" She's finally telling the truth. "Because..." Leo's voice broke. Because despite everything, we were a family once. Because Danny deserves a father who can provide for her. The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Goodbye, Leo. Wait, what about Saturday, my visitation? I paused, thinking of Danny's question at dinner. I'll have Melanie contact your attorney about temporary supervised visitation arrangements. Supervised? Like I'm some kind of criminal? No, like you're someone who coached our 4-year-old to lie to a custody evaluator. Consider yourself lucky I'm allowing any visitation at all. I hung up and blocked his number, then went to check on Danny one more time before bed. She slept peacefully, clutching the stuffed elephant Leo had given her for her 3rd birthday, the last gift he'd given her before leaving us. Watching her sleep, I made a decision. This couldn't continue. The toxic cycle of accusations, manipulations, and public drama would only hurt Danny in the long run. Something had to change, and I was the only one with the power to make that happen. I returned to my bedroom and opened my laptop, navigating to my email. I began composing a message to Melanie, outlining a plan that had been forming in my mind since seeing Crystal's Instagram posts. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about protection. Protection for Danny, for myself, and yes, even for Leo from his own worst impulses. By the time I finished writing, the first hints of dawn were creeping through my window. I hit send and closed my laptop, finally able to sleep with the knowledge that tomorrow would be the beginning of the end of this nightmare. What I didn't know then was that my email would set in motion events that would change all our lives forever, and that Leo's desperation was about to reach dangerous new heights. 3 days later, I sat in Melanie's office reviewing the documents she'd prepared based on my email. This is comprehensive, she said, flipping through the thick folder. Emergency restraining order, petition to modify custody agreement, motion for psychological evaluation, and evidence of parental alienation. She looked up at me. The judge will likely grant everything given Crystal's public statements and the text evidence. I'm not trying to destroy him, I said quietly. I just need to protect Danny. I understand, but these measures are necessary, especially after his behavior the other night. Showing up at your house at 3 a.m.? That's concerning, Autumn. I nodded, remembering the headlights in my driveway, the sound of Leo's engine revving as he sped away. Has he responded to the temporary visitation proposal? His attorney says he finds the supervision requirement insulting, but will comply if it's temporary. Melanie gathered the documents into a neat stack. We'll file these today. The emergency restraining order should be processed immediately. As I left Melanie's office, my phone buzzed with a notification. Another Instagram post from Crystal. This one, a formal video apology to me, stating she'd be testifying if needed about Leo's manipulation of Danny and his plans to use child support for his business ventures. The comment section was flooded with support, both for Crystal's accountability and for my situation. One comment caught my eye. My ex did the same thing. Judge Palmer, you're showing all of us how to handle these situations with grace. Grace wasn't what I felt as I drove to pick up Danny from preschool. I felt tired, angry, and sad for my daughter, who still asked about her father every day, but I had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. At the preschool, Danny's teacher, Ms. Patel, pulled me aside. Judge Palmer, I wanted to let you know that someone tried picking up Danny yesterday. My heart stuttered. What? Who? A woman who said she was sent by Danny's father. She didn't have authorization on your list, so of course we refused. She became quite insistent, saying there was a family emergency. Did she give a name? Ms. Patel consulted her notes. Renee, I believe. We called the emergency number you provided, your sister, who confirmed no one should be picking up Danny except you. I didn't know any Renee. Thank you for following protocol. I'm filing for a modified custody agreement today. I'll provide copies once it's approved. Ms. Patel nodded. We've added extra security measures after yesterday's incident. No one gets past the front desk without proper ID and authorization. On the drive home, Danny chatted happily about her day while I tried to quell my rising panic. Who was Renee? Had Leo sent someone to take Danny? I called Ivy as soon as we got home. Can you come stay with us for a few days? I asked after explaining what happened. Of course. I'll pack a bag and be there in an hour. Ivy paused. Have you told the police? Not yet. I don't have proof Leo was involved. Autumn, someone tried to take your daughter. Call the police. She was right. After hanging up, I filed a police report, providing Leo's information and explaining our custody situation. The officer was sympathetic but cautioned me about the limitations of what they could do without direct evidence. The restraining order will help, he said. Once that's in place, any contact would be a violation. That evening, with Ivy installed in my guest room and Danny asleep upstairs, I finally allowed myself to break down. Ivy held me as I sobbed, releasing weeks of tension and fear. I never thought he'd go this far, I whispered. Using Danny as a pawn is bad enough, but sending someone to take her? We don't know for sure it was him, Ivy reminded me, though her tone suggested she had little doubt. Who else would it be? I wiped my eyes. And who is Renee? My phone rang, Melanie again. The restraining order has been granted, she said. Leo can't come within 500 feet of you or Danny outside of supervised visitation. I've sent a copy to his attorney and the police. Thank you. There's been a development. I told her about the preschool incident. Melanie's voice hardened. This changes things. I'll file an emergency motion to suspend all visitation pending investigation. After hanging up, I checked the security system I'd installed after Leo left, a precaution that had seemed excessive at the time, but now felt woefully inadequate. All doors and windows were secure. Ivy and I double-checked every lock before trying to sleep. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. I hesitated, suspicious of the anonymous message, but opened my email anyway. There, at the top of my inbox, was a message with no subject line from an address I didn't recognize. The body contained only a link to a video file. Don't open it, Ivy warned when I showed her. It could be a virus. But something compelled me to click. The video loaded, showing Leo sitting in what looked like a hotel room, visibly intoxicated. Autumn, he slurred. I know what you're doing. Filing restraining orders. Trying to take Danny away permanently. It won't work. He leaned closer to the camera. Remember when we were happy? Before you became so obsessed with your career? We could have that again. The video cut abruptly, then resumed with Leo looking more disheveled. I deserve half of everything. Half of Danny, half of the house I helped pay for. You owe me. Another cut. Now Leo was angry, his words barely comprehensible. If you think you can use your judge friends to steal my daughter, you're wrong. I have rights. I have plans. He laughed bitterly. Crystal thinks she ruined me? She has no idea what I'm capable of. The video ended, leaving me cold with fear. I forwarded it to Melanie immediately with the message. Evidence for the restraining order violation and possible threats. Ivy stared at me wide-eyed. He's unhinged, Autumn. You need security. I have security. The restraining order, the locks. That's not enough. He's threatening you. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the living room window. A car had pulled into the driveway, the same erratic pattern as the other night. Leo. Call 911, I whispered to Ivy, moving to check the security panel. All doors were still locked, but the motion sensor in the backyard had activated. Ivy was already on the phone with dispatch when we heard glass breaking from the kitchen. He's inside, she gasped. I ran upstairs to Danny's room, heart pounding. I could hear Leo stumbling through the kitchen, knocking things over as he moved. Autumn, he called. I know you're here. We need to talk about our daughter. I scooped up a sleeping Danny and locked us in the bathroom connected to her room, praying the police would arrive quickly. Downstairs, I could hear Ivy shouting at Leo to leave, then a crash that sounded like furniture overturning. Danny stirred in my arms. Mommy? What's happening? Shh. It's okay, baby. We're playing a quiet game. I stroked her hair, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Leo's footsteps pounded up the stairs. Autumn, where's Danny? I have a right to see my daughter. I held Danny tighter as the bathroom doorknob rattled. Open the door. I know you're in there. The police are coming, Leo, I called. Leave now before you make things worse. Worse? He laughed wildly. How could things get worse? You've taken everything from me. My daughter, my job, my reputation. Danny began to cry, frightened by the shouting and the banging on the door. Is that Daddy? Why is he mad? Before I could answer, I heard the bathroom door's hinges creaking as Leo threw his weight against it. The lock wouldn't hold much longer. Then came the blessed sound of sirens, followed by authoritative voices downstairs. Police! Everyone on the ground! Leo's assault on the door stopped. I heard him swear, then his footsteps retreating down the hall. Police! Stop where you are! A scuffle. More shouting. Then silence, broken only by official radio chatter and Danny's quieting sobs. A gentle knock on the bathroom door. Judge Palmer, this is Officer Diaz. The situation is secure. You can come out now. When I opened the door, clutching Danny to my chest, I found 3 officers in the hallway. Leo was nowhere to be seen. We've taken Mr. Ryan into custody, Officer Diaz explained. He's being charged with breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, and attempted kidnapping. Kidnapping? I repeated, dazed. He had a packed bag for your daughter in his car, and a woman waiting in a vehicle down the street, Renee Whitman. She's been detained as well. Downstairs, the kitchen was a disaster. Broken glass everywhere, drawers pulled out, a chair overturned. Ivy sat on the couch, giving her statement to another officer. When she saw us, she rushed over. Are you both okay? I nodded, still processing what had happened. Leo's been arrested, and apparently they found Renee. As Ivy took Danny to the living room, Officer Diaz continued. Mr. Ryan was highly intoxicated. He kept saying he just wanted what was rightfully his. His daughter isn't property, I said, my shock giving way to anger. No, ma'am, she isn't. Officer Diaz hesitated. Given your position, Judge Palmer, this case will receive special handling. The DA's office will be notified immediately. I spent the rest of the night giving statements, comforting Danny, and cleaning up the destruction Leo had left behind. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but there was work to be done. Melanie arrived early, grim-faced but determined. This changes everything, she said, surveying the boarded-up kitchen window. We're filing for permanent sole custody with no visitation rights pending extensive psychiatric evaluation and treatment. Will it work? Leo broke into a judge's home in violation of a restraining order with the apparent intent to abduct a child. Yes, it will work. 2 weeks later, I sat in a different courtroom, this time as the petitioner rather than the judge. Judge Calloway presided over the emergency custody hearing, his expression grave as he reviewed the evidence, Crystal's social media posts, the text messages, the video Leo had sent, police reports from the break-in, and testimony from Ms. Patel about the attempted pickup at preschool. Leo appeared in an orange jumpsuit, having been denied bail due to flight risk and the severity of the charges. His attorney looked resigned, making only token objections to the evidence presented. When it was Leo's turn to speak, he seemed deflated. Nothing like the confident man who had once charmed me or the angry intruder from 2 weeks ago. I made terrible mistakes, he said, voice barely audible. I was jealous of Autumn's success. When I left, I thought she'd fall apart without me. Instead, she thrived. When Crystal came along with her family's money and connections, I saw a chance to finally win at something. He looked at me directly for the first time. I never meant to frighten Danny, I just wanted to be important to someone again. Judge Calloway was unmoved. Mr. Ryan, your actions show a disturbing pattern of manipulation, dishonesty, and disregard for your child's well-being. This court's primary concern is the safety and stability of the minor child. His ruling was swift and comprehensive. I received sole legal and physical custody of Danny. Leo would have no visitation rights until completing court-ordered psychological evaluation and treatment. He would still be required to pay child support based on his previous income, regardless of his current employment situation. As for the criminal charges, Leo eventually accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, mandatory psychological treatment, and a permanent restraining order. The relatively light sentence reflected both his lack of prior criminal history and my own statement to the DA that incarceration would not serve Danny's long-term interests. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Danny asked about her father occasionally, but the questions came less frequently. I'd arranged for her to see a child psychologist who specialized in family trauma, and the sessions seemed to be helping. Crystal had moved across the country, according to her Instagram. Her final post about our situation had been a picture of the courthouse with the caption, "Sometimes justice comes from unexpected places, wishing Judge Palmer and her daughter peace and healing." I returned home from work one evening to find Ivy and Danny in the kitchen, flour covering every surface as they attempted to make cookies. "Mommy," Danny squealed, running to hug me with powdery hands. "We're making chocolate chip explosion cookies." "I can see that," I laughed, surveying the chaos. "The explosion part seems particularly successful." Ivy shrugged apologetically. "Baking isn't my strength. But we're having fun, right, Munchkin?" Danny nodded enthusiastically, returning to her vigorous stirring. My phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Melanie. Thought you'd want to know. Leo completed his first round of therapy. His counselor reports genuine progress in understanding his behavior patterns. He's asked about writing a letter to Danny. No pressure to allow it, just keeping you informed. I set the phone down, watching my daughter happily making a mess with her aunt. There would be time later to consider Leo's request, to weigh what was best for Danny against the risks of allowing him back into her life in any capacity. For now, I was content to live in this moment, covered in flower, surrounded by love, and secure in the knowledge that I had done what was necessary to protect what mattered most. The true revenge wasn't in Leo's public humiliation or legal consequences. It was in reclaiming our peace, in building a life where Danny could thrive without fear, and in knowing that I had remained true to my principles even when faced with betrayal. As a judge, I believed in justice. As a mother, I believed in protection. And sometimes, when the system works as it should, they're one and the same. I helped Danny wash the flour from her hands, listening to her chatter about her day at preschool, ordinary moments that had once seemed in jeopardy, but now stretched before us with promise. That night, after tucking Danny in, I sat on my back porch with a glass of wine, looking at the stars. My phone buzzed with a notification, a direct message from a stranger who had followed my story through Crystal's posts. Thank you for showing strength through this ordeal. Your story helped me find courage to leave my manipulative ex. Some battles are worth fighting. I smiled, thinking of all the women who had reached out with similar messages. If my painful journey had helped even one person find their way to safety, then something good had come from the chaos. This chapter of my life was closing. The healing had begun, and whatever came next, I was ready to face it, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had reclaimed her power and found justice in the most unexpected of ways. If you've ever faced someone who underestimated you, who tried to take what mattered most, remember this. Your strength is in your truth. Stand firm in who you are. Like this video if my story resonated with you, and subscribe for more journeys of resilience and triumph. Share your own story in the comments. Sometimes the greatest healing comes from knowing we're not alone.